How to Spark Success show. And this is the podcast where I have conversations with smart and savvy business owners, thought leaders, and people doing really cool things around the globe. So I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, who is a Masterchef winner in 2010. And by his own words, he's our charcuterie fiend. And he is co-founder of Tempus Foods. So welcome to the amazing Dhruv Baker. How are you, Dhruv?
Hey Liz, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. You've had a busy few weeks, I hear.
It's been, I feel like I've been saying that for about 10 years. And you go, yo, it's been a busy few weeks. And people say, well, when did it start? And yeah, I would say it has been a busy 10 years. But, you know, the last 3 or 4 months where the landscape for everyone has changed dramatically has kind of manifested itself in such a way that the last few weeks have been exceptionally busy.
Really busy. So do you want to tell us a bit about Tempus Foods, about, you know, how your journey, how you got to sort of be co-founder of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, so Tempus Foods is a British charcuterie company. You know, we only use very high welfare standard animals. We only use ex-breeding animals. So we've got an incredibly tight focus on the ethical and the sustainable side of the business. And it was something that was born out of a passion, really. I know that word gets thrown around a lot, but an industry like food, like many others, is reliant on passion, because you're not going to do it to make tons and tons of money. So I got in. I mean, I've always loved charcuterie. Who doesn't, right? But I used to sublet a kitchen with my business partner Tom, now business partner Tom, and I'd be making canapes and doing, you know, mind-numbingly, repetitively dull tasks, and he'd be butchering an enormous pig, and months later he'd have air-dried hams and salamis and these amazing products. And I've always thought charcuterie is very much alchemy. It's kind of like magic. Within the sort of world of food, there's a few things that are truly magic: wine, cheese, and charcuterie, where you take incredibly basic, you know, everybody knows what milk, what grapes, and what meat are, and then you end up with these products which are, you know, they've superseded everything. And I used to be one of those people who looked at these products and you just think, how can anyone make this, you know? So Tom and I, a few years ago, started experimenting with it. I started writing some flavors. He kind of taught me his technical side of things. He had spent a number of years in Italy. And then sort of at the time I was running a pub restaurant, which I owned, but fast forward 3 years and we're now here in Tempest into our 3rd year. In our 1st year, we won Best Charcuterie Company in the UK. In year 2, we won Best Product in the country, as well as Master Charcutier of Great Britain. But, you know, these are the accolades, while being wonderful, actually to us aren't as important as people buying or repeatedly buying our product, but also where we're stocked speaks volumes about, you know, who we are and what we do. So Tom and I are our own harshest critics. Believe it or not, after 3 years, we have had, despite the accolades and the prizes and the awards, we have had one celebratory beer in that time, because
Wow.
The awards come through and then you say, well, we didn't get that one. Why didn't we get that one? Why was this a silver? Why was this a 9 and not a 10? As opposed to celebrating, you know, the victories. So, yeah, there's probably a lot in there that we can dissect later on, but it was born out of a passion. It was born out of a genuine, deep-seated interest in something. And then the rest, we're kind of just learning as we go.
Because obviously in the last 10 years, you've had a really interesting journey, because prior to that, you were in the corporate world, weren't you? So,
Yeah.
You know, tell us a bit about that. You were always a very much foodie and, you know, loved that side of things. So, you know,
Yes.
Obviously it's changed quite dramatically for you since then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's food for me was always this, it was never a real job, you know. The deal was you went to school, you went to university, you got a proper job, which inevitably meant city, law, finance, you know, that kind of thing. And that was a kind of trajectory that I kind of set out on. Left university, spent 10 to 15 years in media. And while enjoying it, I was never particularly fulfilled. You know, I just thought that pretty much anybody could sit at this desk, pick up the phone and do what I'm doing. And so, you know, you just kind of trundle along, but then you get to a point where financially you can't leave because you're kind of trapped, right? You've got mortgages and school fees and kids and reality. And this pipe dream of mine of food just became further and further away. And I hit 30, and then you think, right, well, actually, I've got a kid who would like another. And all of these dreams of having read Anthony Bourdain's, Kitchen Confidential and watched Gordon Ramsay and Marco on TV for years, you just think, well, you know what, it's not meant to be. And then you kind of start to come to grips with that reality, which is in a way kind of heartbreaking, because they get to work and you think, this is it, this is it. which in itself is quite a realization. And then just as I'd kind of almost accepted my fate, I got onto Masterchef, and that was a completely serendipitous event. I was whinging it to my wife and a very good friend who I went to university with about how bored I was, and they both independently said to me that day, well, why don't you apply for Masterchef? I thought, well, that's a bloody useless idea. Hung up, carried on faffing around online, and thought, well, why not? And I Googled Masterchef application, filled out the form, sent it off. I had no idea whether it was a valid site, whether it was an application that was still live, and forgot about it. And then a few weeks later, I got a call, had a phone interview, had a screen test, and then before I knew it, I was on Masterchef, which to this day is one of the most surreal moments of my life. Having watched it avidly way back back to the days of I've gone completely blank, Lloyd Grossman and Grey Food from Surrey, right through to when Tommy Myers kind of kickstarted the new series with John and Greg, and beyond. And then actually to find myself on it was just ridiculous and surreal and very, very bizarre. And I still don't quite believe it at times, just because it was so bizarre. But
amazing. Yeah, and almost like, was it the final that was in India? Where was it? There was one that was super hot. It looked like it was about 50 degrees.
It was in India. So we had 6 days in India to shoot 3 episodes, and generally, the final 3 episodes. Now the plan was we land, we shoot an episode, we have a day off, we shoot. Well, it's sort of, we have a day on, a day off filming. Now, given the bureaucracy and everything involved, for the first 3 days, nothing happened. We sat by a pool. And while we were thinking, isn't this great? In the back of my mind, there was a voice saying, there's still 3 full days of filming that need to get done. And I'm thinking, well, I'm no mathematician, but we had 6. We've been here 3, which is we have to solidly film for 3 days. And we did. We'd come off that unbelievably warm kind of ramparts of the fort, of the Mehrangear Fort. It was 100 degrees pre 9 a.m. that day.
Oh gosh.
And then, you get through it. And I think I'd applaud anyone to get through that. And it was kind of a case of, here's a glass of water or a bottle of water, change a jacket, we're back to cook for 140 people this evening at a school. And I mean, it was ridiculous. Oh. But it really sets you up for a real insight into that world. At the time you're thinking, God, this shouldn't even be allowed. And I've had weeks in the kitchen where every day has been like that. So, it was a good test to see whether you were cut out for it.
Yeah, definitely. And it sort of opened up so many different things. I mean, I've seen you've been so busy. We were constantly seeing you on like packets in the supermarket and TV. And you were doing sort of a series. Was it Croatia that you did your series with?
Yeah, it's because I'm kind of very much living in the moment, and there's never been a plan. And you kind of think, well, I'll get round to planning something when I get this project out of the way. And as you come to the end of that project, something else starts. You say, well, I'll start this, and then then we'll get onto the plan. And that's kind of how I've run for 10 years. And after a while, you panic because there is no plan. And very much like actors, I think, you're only as good as your current job. You see them, they think, I'm never going to work again. And obviously they do. And after a while, you kind of get used to it, and you start to look forward to those pauses.
Yeah. And
relish them, which I'm sure I will, should there be one. But then at the same time, you don't want to pause because you think, this could be it. That was it. So it's that funny balance you've got to try and strike.
Yeah, that's amazing. So sort of in the last 10 years particularly, what do you think has been the biggest factor for you in your success?
I was thinking about this earlier when we spoke, and the funny thing is that I don't see it as success. I just see it. I don't know how I see it. That's first and foremost. But I think having an unwavering belief in what you do or what I do helps. So, you know, I very quickly learned to take on projects that I believe in and say no to ones I didn't. And in many cases, they were incredibly lucrative projects that I said no to, but for whatever reason, I didn't believe in them. And I think having that as a kind of founding belief is probably a really good start, because you're aligning what you do with your ethics or your approach to things or your mindset or your belief system. So, you know, you don't all of a sudden find yourself hawking something you don't believe in. And I think that would in turn undermine or undervalue what I did. So when I do something, it's because I genuinely believe in it and it's something that I want to do. I think that was probably one of the key motivators. And one of the things that sort of kept me straight was if you don't believe in it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that trying to just very quickly skim back mentally over the years, and I can't think of any situation that had arisen where I was thinking, you know what, I'll just suck it up and do this because the money's good. Genuinely can't, actually. I can think of lots I said no to. And some I wish I don't wish I hadn't said no to, because that undermines what everything I've said. But I think that a complete belief in what you're doing is kind of paramount to it. And I think that I'd never really thought about it till you asked me the question about, because as I said, I still don't deem myself to be successful, which then opens up the whole can of worms of what is success, right? How do you measure success? How does one measure success? And that's an age-old question that is very different answers depending on your mindset, the cultural environment you're in. You know, the mindset from a Southeast Asian perspective is very different to a British, or European, or American one. So, you know, what is success, I guess, in itself is a question that you go round and round asking. But I would say that would be it. A firm belief in what you do or what I do.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting question, because as a success coach, one of the first things I do with clients is sort of to identify for them, what does success look like? And that can be totally different from one client to another. And exactly, you know, as you say, some people's success might be just continually sort of finding opportunities, being challenged, you know, doing new things, getting out of your comfort zone. And for someone else, that might just be sort of reaching a certain, you know, role within an organisation, or sort of launching a business. So yeah, I think that's really key. And it's obvious what you're doing you love, because, you know, I know we've had sort of conversations with sort of groups of friends around, you know, food and nice wine, and, you know, that you can sort of bring that in. And what you and Tom are doing sort of together as a partnership is sort of bringing different sides of that, which is, you know, really key. And it's interesting what you say about sort of reflecting back on, you know, great, we won this award, but why didn't we win the other ones? And I think that's all whole part of sort of continuous improvement, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, that is crucial. I mean, we're probably guilty of being overly focused on that side of things, but there's different ways of looking at it, right? People could say you did really well at X and Y, and I could say, well, I believe genuinely, hand on heart, and it's not the humble brag, it's not looking for validation. If there's something I believe Tom or I could have done better, then we don't deem for it to have been a success. And he and I are very, very aligned in that one. I think a business partnership where one is happy to take the 70% win and the other sees it as a 30% failure would be destined to fail. Now, he and I are very aligned. So I think it can be criticized as a very negative approach, but I don't see it as a negative approach. I see it as, if we're not doing something to the best of our abilities, we need to rectify that. Yeah. And how can we do that? And, you know, even 3 years in, the product now, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when we first started, I knew the product was good, and it was not my words, it was the best in the country. But to me, that didn't mean anything. I want it to sit alongside a platter of stuff from Spain and from Italy, and for it to be deemed to be of a level. And, you know, for us, that's always been our goal. Now, as you say, where do people peg their question of success? And somebody could say, you know, I'm setting out to be the best producer in the UK. When Tom and I started this business, I said to him, the day we took the keys on and had our site that we had built, if we are not the best producer in a year, I will deem our first year a failure. And actually, we got that in 6 months. So, you know, we got ourselves 6 months of grace. But, you know, Tom and I, as I said, have that same approach. If it's not perfect in our eyes, then we've dropped the ball somewhere. And it's not being negative. It's just a case of saying we're not up to our own standards. And I think it's a very personal thing. How do you judge that? But we've made product that we deem to be, that is technically flawless. Yeah. And what our job is to do is to make sure we can make literally tons of that every week, and for every week for it to be as good as the previous week, or a little bit better ideally.
And do you think that sort of approach, that sort of looking for perfection and improvement, is sort of, because you've both sort of got that food chef background, do you think that comes with that naturally, or do you think that's just you as sort of personality?
No, 100%, because the thing about a good kitchen and a good restaurant is that it's about consistency, and every plate of food needs to be flawless. Anyone can cook a good plate of food, but to cook 200 identically good plates of food day in, day out is a very different mindset. And I was very lucky to have learned from some of the best chefs in the country and to have spent time in their kitchens. And, you know, Atul Kochhar taught me a lot. Tom Kitchen taught me. I learned more in 2 weeks with Tom than I have done in sort of decades up in Edinburgh. And it was that relentless pursuit for excellence. And it wasn't a case of, wouldn't it be nice if we do attain that? It was, attaining it is one thing, it's maintaining it. And seeing that single-mindedness in somebody, which I'd never really witnessed in other industries. I'd never seen, you know, no one's in media who's selling outdoor advertising, who you know, is relentlessly pursuing to be the best. We're just trying to get out to lunch and take clients out on a jolly and to drink a load of champagne before midday. And seeing that kind of, I guess, sparked something that it was a good way to work. I mean, it comes at a price. Yeah. It can make you a bit of an arse to deal with. It can result in, there is obviously a massive negative downside to that, because somebody's got to take the rough with the smooth. And inevitably and invariably, if you look at successful chefs, they don't always necessarily have the greatest private lives. The marriages often suffer. You know, you've got to give at some point. And if they compromise, there's no compromise at the work end. Sadly, there needs to be, you know, the cost comes out. You pay somebody else at some other point. And I learned that having had a restaurant, and actually I left the restaurant and I vowed to myself that I would find a balance between the two. And luckily, I think we're in a position now where I have found a balance between the two while maintaining the standards that Tom and I have set for ourselves for the business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know, you know, very family orientated as well. You're amazing boys and lovely wife, of course.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
What would you say on a daily, weekly basis are your success habits, you know, as you sort of go about your day?
I will openly say that it's been more luck and coincidence and design where we've got to in the last year or two. Now, I say that because when you're running a business, it's very easy, especially a small business and a startup, to find yourself doing jobs which are unconsequential, delivering stuff to somebody, going out to buy chemicals for the cleaning rota, but you're being busy, so you feel you're helping. And actually, Tom and I found ourselves, and it happens bit by bit by bit, much like, you know, if somebody changed one piece of furniture in that room, by the end of the year, it's a different room and you didn't see it happening. I'm very lucky that we've got a group of investors, one of whom is incredibly astute and tactically minded and strategically minded, who also went to university with us. And Dan keeps pointing out, you are wasting your time. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it's quite a blunt reality check when I speak to him. And actually, learning from him, I've learned a number of lessons which have made me infinitely better at what I do. One, which is, you are not expected to be good at everything. It's not failure to ask for help. If you're good at cooking and you can put together a really good flavor profile and make flawless charcuterie, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be able to write management financial reports every month. You know, it's okay to say, you know what, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But working a small team, you end up picking up the slack. And so what you end up doing is doing lots of things not very well, instead of focusing on the one thing you should do well. business 01, right? You outsource your non-core competencies. And what we found ourselves doing was doing dumb stuff that made us work 16 hours a day, but not tactically and not strategically clever stuff. You know, I should be out there finding customers and signing up retailers and airlines and this, that, and the other. But you say, well, I can't actually, because I'm driving to Bath next month, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. And actually, having had an investor who tells us repeatedly we need to focus on what we do. So Tom needs to do what he's best at, which is the technical side and getting that product absolutely perfect every time. And I need to be out selling it. Now, when we do find ourselves doing those roles, the business works like a dream. Now, that could have been the answer I told you, but, I've learned the hard way that don't try and do everything, because I've done it. And I've been doing it for the last month. Since COVID-19, our business has changed dramatically. And it's meant that the fulfillment element has changed dramatically. And Tom and I have been physically slicing meat on a manual slicer and packing it ourselves. And we've done that for 3 months, which is insanity. And we've changed the way we work. We've got a team of 4 guys who come in for 4 days a week, and they do all of our slicing and packing, and that's done. So all of a sudden, I feel like this weight's been lifted, and I can now focus on what I do best, and Tom can focus on what he does best. Because if you're the sort of pointy end of a business and you're not doing what you're best at, that business will not do well. I think that, and you end up working in the business, not on the business.
Yeah, I think that's something that is, happens a lot with, if you've started your own business, if you're a sort of solopreneur, get busy being busy. And especially when it gets more busy, you almost, the temptation can be to be pulled into those sort of tasks that you can outsource. And I think that's really good piece of advice, just to sort of work on your strengths, outsource the rest, and make sure you're sort of working on growing the business, definitely.
And actually, it's an ongoing process. So keep an eye on what is it that you do that makes you good at what you do. And actually, it's not it's not a very linear binary thing. That will evolve and change. And actually, constant evaluation and just an awareness of what's going on around you. I mean, I was talking to, again, our kind of investor, Dan, and he said, look, he's an incredibly successful, probably one of the most successful people I know. But he said it comes from understanding and recognizing your weaknesses. And it was Steve Jobs, I think, who said, we don't hire smart people to tell them what we do. We hire smart people for them to tell us what they can do for us.
Yeah.
And that, all of a sudden, you get this light bulb moment, and you think, hang on, why am I dictating how our report should be written? I know nothing about that. Let somebody who's qualified do that. And actually, it's that acceptance and recognition of fallibility where you'll really start to thrive. And I think entrepreneurs or startups, and I think the tendency, mistake tends to be that they can do everything, but the really successful ones are the ones who know they can't do everything.
Yeah, like IT, like what we were talking about.
Oh my God, don't even get me started on that. I've got my phone balanced on a pencil on the front of my cracked laptop screen in order to do this call. That sums me up, technically.
Amazing. So yeah, I'm bringing people in, bringing experts in. So if you could go over and do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Again, a question I've given a lot of thought to, and I know I should be saying I should have done this, that, and the other, but actually that would have implied hindsight, which nobody ever has the benefit of. And so genuinely, the answer is I wouldn't have done any of it any differently, because by changing what I've done, I would have probably changed what I've learned.
Yeah.
And the only way to genuinely learn is by making mistakes. The first thing you're taught in the kitchen is that you learn by making mistakes. And the second thing is, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying or pushing hard enough. Which all goes back to the whole kind of concept of comfort zone and how do you work. So obviously that saying make mistakes is a good thing, unless they're the same mistakes, in which case then you really need to evaluate why you're doing what you're doing. But I firmly believe if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough, but as long as you're learning from those mistakes.
Yeah.
Don't make mistakes.
I think, and that's been coming up a lot. If one of my guests was like, his big advice was go and make lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of mistakes in business and not being afraid of them and sort of shying away. So I think, that's really key. So you've worked with some really amazing people over the last 10 years. What do you think's been the best piece of advice you've received about success during that time?
Do you know what? I wish if I could distill it down to one answer, I would be sitting where you're sitting, talking to somebody like me. I think it's a case of continual improvement, but the starting point, I think, has to be always have that singular belief in what it is you're doing. The rest can be learned, the rest can be tweaked. You can always build on it, but I think you need to know which way the ship's pointing. And that has to be the starting point, which is always have that unshakable belief in what you do, because you will have questions about belief in yourself. Oh, trust me, imposter syndrome, questioning ability. I've been there, and regularly it crops up. But I think as long as you strip it back to the basics, which is, do I believe in what I'm doing? Which is yes. And have what I've been doing, has it been progressing in the right direction? Yes. And you go, well, then this is a kind of a blip. As long as the line is doing that, there are always going to be downturns, but as long as the trend is upwards, then you're on the right track. And accept that there will be downturns. There'll be days and weeks that you feel that you're not doing the right thing, that things aren't going to plan. And if that happens, then just don't fight it. It's a slump. It'll pass. I think the worst thing is that when people have a bad day or that bit of a downturn, it's that, like a riptide, right? They all say swim with it and not against the current. Just let it go. Go with it. Take a few days to just get yourself together. Because the belief is that if it's been doing that, then you're allowed a little blip. It's not going to be a straight line forever, if only, right?
And I love that sort of swim, just go with it rather than trying to swim against it. I think, because there will be a sort of upward trend at some point. So yeah, that's really good. So how can people find out more about Tempus Foods? Where can they find your products, website, etc.?
So tempusfoods.com is our website, and that will kind of put you in touch with, or give you an idea of where we're stocked. Tempus Foods on Instagram and on Twitter and all social platforms, or via me, sort of Dhruv Baker 1, which is number 1 at because there's not, I don't know why. Well, I do know why I did it with the 1. I did it originally when I won Masterchef, and we had to sign NDAs, we had to be sworn to secrecy, probably under pain of death, I imagine. The rushes for our episode, for the final episodes, were in the same safe as the only copy of the King's Speech. So I, for a giggle, thought if I make all my Twitter and Instagram handles Dhruv Baker 1, as in I won, but obviously no one could question it. And I remember saying to the producer about a year later that it wasn't that funny, and she hit the roof. Didn't find it at all funny. So Dhruv Baker 1, and yeah, but Tempus Foods, it's in the direction I want it to be going. I look at the last 2.5 years more as kind of proof of concept. Again, which people would say is a bit harsh, but I fully stand by that. And now I think we're in a position to really start to push on and go where I want Tempest to go, or where Tom and I want it to go.
Amazing. So head over to tempusfoods.com and find out more. So thank you so much, Dhruv. It's been a delight hearing more about what you're doing and, advice and, how your success journey. So thanks for being a guest.
My pleasure, Liz. Thank you. As ever, lovely to speak to you.
He's brilliant. So, and for the listeners, join me for the next episode of How to Spark Success, where I'll be joined by Judy Fox, who is a LinkedIn business coach expert. She's a podcast host of the Judy Fox Show and an expert in sales and video strategy. So that'll be one to watch if you're a business owner and looking to sort of up your visibility. And if you've been inspired by what you've heard today or my other guests, then head over to sparksucceed.co.uk and book in a free strategy call with me. That's Liz Hamlet, success coach and business mentor. So thank you so much, Dhruv, for joining me, and good luck with the next few months with Tempest.
Thank you, Liz. Bye.
Take care. Bye.